Well, thank you folks for joining me today for my first presentation as the official Miro Ambassador for South Florida. I'm excited to be here to share some of the reasons why I absolutely love using Miro every day for UX and some UI design and other things as well. So the main reason I called this talk To Infinity and Beyond is because Miro is known for having an infinite canvas. So the talk is going to be about a brief introduction to UX design, but in Miro, unlike the old-fashioned conference rooms, similar to this one, you don't have to worry about having a wall or an end of a canvas, an end of a whiteboard. So a little bit about me. My name is Roman Smolkin. I lead a product design team for UX and UI work, and I've been doing that for about 8 years now. Before that, I've spent 14 years as a developer, also classically trained violinist, and more recently 12 years as a professional photographer with some award-winning photos, including Photo of the Year last year. And I got the championship trophy for the Pickleball Club Championship this year as well. So if anybody up for a tennis or a pickleball game or want some good photos, let me know, and my contact information is listed on here. If you would also like to see the slides, you can access the bit.ly link for Miro-West Palm Beach, and this slide deck, actually this whole file will be available to you in the view-only mode, so you don't need to take pictures of the screen, and you can just follow along. So the biggest reason why we're here today, I think, is to get out of the Stone Age. Now this is not new really anymore, but it is still true, and the biggest change came before COVID. Before COVID, it was very frequent that we would still be stuck in very large conference rooms with limited space, no matter how large they were, sticking big poster sheets on walls and sticking sticky notes on those, and then trying to find where that sticky was, or trying to read everybody's handwriting, and not really being able to go beyond stickies. And then the next day somebody else would come in and accidentally, or on purpose, we erase the entire whiteboard because now they need to have a different meaning in that room. And then somebody may or may not have taken a picture of what you had on the board with their phone. So you might have lost an entire days or multiple days of work and ideas, and it's also really, really hard to recollect it. Basically, having remote members in a room would be impossible. For somebody to see what happened in the room afterwards would also be impossible. And there was basically no undo. So if you have spelling errors, if you put things in the wrong place, you basically, you could redo, I guess you can write more stickies up, but you couldn't just erase. Well, on the whiteboard you can also do a little bit of erasing. But it was kind of mostly handwritten, mostly messy, not really easy to do what you can do today in Miro, and you can go so much beyond sticky notes and so much beyond writing, putting entire documents on there that are editable. You can put entire interactive prototypes on your boards. You can vote through them with your teams, and it's just created so much freedom for how we can operate with a remote team very successfully day in and day out. So why Miro specifically for UX? It does have many other uses. And I've even used it for personal stuff as well. But the biggest thing I already mentioned is, of course, the infinite canvas. There's no edges, there's no limits. You can zoom out to see as much as you want or zoom in to see as close as you need to something. So it gives you complete flexibility, and I still would recommend using the biggest monitor you can with it so that you still get the feel of a large whiteboard. In fact, I've actually been a Miro user since before it was called Miro. It was originally called the real-time board because that's what it was. It allowed you to put stickies on a virtual whiteboard, and it just really has evolved from 4 years. I should probably say, worth saying, that Miro does have competition. They're certainly not the only product that can do something like this. And perhaps their biggest recent competition has come from Figma. For a long time, Figma wasn't really a threat to Miro because it was primarily focused on design. It does also have an infinite canvas, but it really didn't have all the tools that Miro did, like stickies, like all the templates and all of that. That was more geared toward UX as opposed to UI design. In the last few years, a new product from Figma, multiple new products have come out. One called FigJam, which is essentially a Miro clone, But as good as it is, and now it's included in the Figma subscription. So if you are paying for Figma, it might be the right choice. And it does have some really cool tools, but it's still light years behind, no pun intended, actually pure pun intended, light years behind Miro, because just they're about 20 years behind. And they're doing really good for what they are, and they're accelerating really quickly. You can do a lot more in Miro. It's more polished, it's got more connected applications. They're just more available to you inside Miro. And on the flip side, Figma does also have a different product called Slides, which does let you create slide decks similar to this. By the way, this one is created in Miro, and I can show you then exactly how I did it. But the coolest thing about Figma Slides is you can actually include interactive Figma prototypes right inside your slide, which for a while was like the winning feature of Figma Slide against Miro, but it is also no longer true, because now you can plug in interactive Claude prototypes right into a Miro board and put those on your slides. So that is really going to blow things out of the water. You can have like live websites on here if you want, embedded right inside of Miro that work and interact with them. So real-time collaboration, of course, is another huge feature. We are so used to, since COVID, being geographically diverse teams. I have folks in my company from all over Ukraine, Spain, all over the United States, other countries, and many people I work with also have coworkers, or many people I know also have coworkers all around the globe. So real-time collaboration through Miro and similar tools has really transformed what's possible for us to do, and we no longer have to be locked in the same room to actually be productive with the team. And it does give you complete flexibility. So yes, you have your sticky notes and you have your wireframes, but Miro allows you to organize any kind of data you need. You can throw PDF documents in there. You can actually put YouTube videos in there and make clips out of them, like shorter clips out of them, and then have pieces that you want to show all in Miro. It is tremendously powerful, and most people don't actually utilize probably less than 1% of what it can do for you. So today is supposed to be about UX, not just in Miro. So I'm going to spend very little time on UX today, but I will give you the very highlights unless there's questions, and I can dive deeper into the other topics. Otherwise, I think we'll save more UX stuff for next time. But I'm a huge proponent for the process called the design thinking process. It originated with the Stanford School of Design, and it's probably the de facto standard across UX teams. There are others. IBM has come up with one. There's one called Double Diamond. There's a few other ones, but the design thinking one stands out because A, it's simple, B, it really makes sense and it does work, and it breaks things down into 5 pretty straightforward phases. The most important part about it is you can go from any phase to any other phase, so it's a loop and essentially an infinite loop. And there's an unmentioned phase as well, the sixth one being the implementation. So you start by emphasizing with your users. You try to get a deep understanding of what affects their day-to-day life, what would make their life better, like what can we do as a software, as a product developers, designers, to create something that really opens up the flexibility for them, saves them time ideally. So my personal biggest claim to fame is I can find and save a click in any piece of software. So give me any piece of software and I will find at least one click that could be eliminated and not reduce the amount of time people have to do something. Usually I can save dozens if not hundreds. So you emphasize with the users. Once you have a good understanding of what's getting in their way, what's creating friction in their workday, and what the feature could help them, then you define the actual problem. So you go through the findings, and defining the right problem is very important, because if you don't create the correct problem statement, you might create a great solution to a problem that nobody has. So actually understanding what people need and fulfilling that need is completely essential, as opposed to creating a great feature for a product that nobody really asked for. And that is such a key big distinction. So it sounds like defining the problem statement is trivial. It's like writing down 1 or 2 sentences, but it's not. You really got to analyze all of the things that you learned from the first phase to define the proper problem statement so your team and you can focus on solving the right problems. And then the next two things are my personal favorites. So the first two are often referred to as UX research, and then the next two are often referred to as UX design. UI also comes into play at the next two phases as well. And I don't do as much research on myself. I work with a team, and actually in my company, most product owners actually do the research as opposed to UX researchers, but sometimes you have business analysts who do the research as well. So it really varies. It kind of is a field within a field. But then you begin your ideation. And the coolest thing about ideation is there's no such thing as a bad idea. No ideas are thrown out. Every idea is documented and is placed, is placed on a whiteboard. And so no idea is a bad idea. And every idea can be examined. So at the very least, you want to document it so that in the future, if something comes up, you can say, after you've analyzed all your ideas and you've picked which one you're actually going to move forward with, sometimes years later, people will come to you and say, hey, I have a better idea. We should do this. And you can go back to your ideation phase in documentation, usually in Miro, sometimes in Figma, sometimes on paper. But I've done this multiple times when it was like, we have looked at that idea, we have evaluated thoroughly, we've done user testing on that idea, and we've proved that that particular idea doesn't work. So it's great. So you put all the ideas you can on this infinite whiteboard. You pick which ones you're going to move forward with, but you also document which ones you're not going to move forward with and why you're not going to do it. So that's a big part of the whole process. And then you begin the prototyping. Prototyping can be a low fidelity, which can actually be done fairly easily in Miro. It can be done mid fidelity or high fidelity, which is probably better in Figma or nowadays in AI tools as well. Now, Miro does charge extra for their UI prototyping kit, and it essentially doubles your subscription, but it is kind of worth it unless you already subscribe to something like Claude Design, and then it's really not worth it in my opinion because that can do better. But it's there for you, it's available, and if you're not, Miro does also have AI, which is fairly robust as well. And of course, after you have your prototypes, essentially after every phase of prototyping, so whether it's low fidelity, mid fidelity, or high fidelity, you have to test with real users. You have to get real feedback. You have to analyze, is your solution actually working? You have to figure out maybe parts of it are working, parts of it can be improved, and you really have to go back and iterate through the process a few more times, go back to your users, test with your users, refine your problem statements, perhaps do some more ideation, perhaps refine your prototypes, and eventually test. And when you're satisfied with your tests, that's when you progress to implementation. So the reason implementation isn't really on the Stanford School of Design process is this process, among many other things, is designed to save companies a lot of money. So if you go to code, unless AI is doing it for you nowadays, but then you're just spending money on AI, that is theoretically a much slower process than getting a simple prototype built in something like Figma. So you can go from minutes of work and test to being able to test something with the users to maybe days, months, years of work, depending on what you're actually building. So it is essential to test the prototypes before you release it in code. And of course, the testing in code is also just as essential, maybe even more essential, but that's a different conversation and does not involve the design thinking process.
So quick question, the projects that you take on, you take it through this framework basically every single time?
So good question, and the question was the projects that I take on, do I take it through this framework every single time? And the basic answer is yes. The question is, do I actually do every single step myself? And usually the answer to that is no. So I work with a team where usually the emphasized step and the defined step 90% of the time is done for me by my team. Not always. Sometimes I've actually gone on site with clients and sat next to them as well. So I have done it. I do it sometimes. I don't do it enough. I'd like to do it more. But usually it's other members of my team that regularly travel to on-sites. They record sessions with the users. They interview the users. Some of it also comes from outside of our team as well. It comes from the sales and marketing teams a lot, from their pitches. So some of the new prospects and ideas come, sometimes they come from contracts. Like sometimes we sell a feature that doesn't actually exist yet, and then we actually have to deliver it. But the ideation, yes, absolutely. It can also start with help of AI and help of my team, of course. But I love the ideation phase and I love the prototyping phase. So that's where I kind of spend the bulk of my days. And then testing, we should really do more. We do limited testing, and usually the product owners kind of take ownership of that step as well, because they have to get clients on a call and get them scheduled. So we don't get direct testing often enough. Sometimes we do, but usually it's through presentation, through remote, and somebody kind of leads the testing session and we gather feedback that way.
How many of these steps can be, like the testing step, can be done by AI if it has the proper requirements for this whole process and what the customer is looking for? Like in code, right, you can have an agent that's writing the code, and you have an agent that's reviewing the code, and those could be two different providers.
Yeah, I don't think that testing is probably the least likely for AI here, because that's where you want to get real user feedback. The earlier phases, like when you're gathering information, analyzing all that information is absolutely a great opportunity for AI. So when you're putting all those stickies up on the board to cluster them, Miro actually has a clustering feature. It's really cool. You can cluster by color, you can cluster by topic, you can get their AI to start moving things around for you. So there's other really good tools for that as well. So doing that is great. In the prototyping stuff, now ideation, you can make one prototype and throw it at AI and say, give me 3 more things similar to it or not similar to it, like you say, go crazy. Or you can actually have it make the first version for you, which is very common now. And it does pretty darn good for what I call the first wireframe. Even when they look like they're built websites and they are interactive, it's still serving the purpose of your initial wireframe. They're meant to be thrown out. They're not meant to be full-featured. So you do what you can, and then you evaluate, and then you get to your users. You still have to test. So we actually do show Claude design prototypes to our users to get feedback sometimes before going through the actual prototyping process now. And we've also polished our Claude design to the point where it looks like our product. So some key features in Miro, some of them we've already mentioned, but not all of them. So sticky notes. Sticky notes have been around in Miro for probably about 20 years, give or take. I probably should have looked up when they were actually started, but they've been around a long time, and I've been using it just about as long as they've been around. So sticky notes are the astronauts' best friend. You can capture your ideas, get feedback, color code things, and cluster them across your board. We kind of just talked about that. Frames is a way that lets you group things, and you can group things in a million different ways. You can also have frames inside frames if you want. There are infinite number of uses for frames. You can use them as your slides, and they don't even have to be all the same size. Now Figma is smart enough to zoom in to a frame and do the best it can to fit it on the screen. It also allows you to zoom in around your frame while in the presentation. So very possible, maybe not ideal. So I like to keep my frames fairly uniform. I like the HD dimensions, so they do size better to a presentation, but not always. Sometimes you just want to throw stuff on there and put a bunch of sticky notes on there. One of my cameras decided to stop working. Fantastic. So frames. Yeah, frames you can use for organizing things, for timing, like your phases of the product rollouts and whatnot, for grouping things that are related, for analyzing things by categories or whatnot. So there's a huge number of ways in which you can use frames. I did mention that Miro does have a built-in UI component library and shape library that you can use to build little prototypes out of. They do charge extra for you to use it, but you can also kind of do a more basic version of it with just shapes, which is often sufficient, especially if you're going to get AI involved shortly after. But if you are willing to pay, I think it's like $8 a month per user. It is great because it can help you throw things together very quickly, and it doesn't have the same kind of limitation where Figma you have to be more precise. You have to think much more structured. In Miro, you can be much looser and much more imperfect and still get the things done. And perhaps one of its biggest selling points is a huge number of templates that are available to start with, and I will also show you a couple of examples of those. So some activities for your crew on your spaceship to collaborate. Of course, doing your user research synthesis. So you combine all the stuff you learn from emphasized step in the design thinking process, and you begin synthesizing it by creating your journey maps, for your users, your flow diagrams, your basic beginnings of your data architecture, and you start creating a visualization of the emotions, the pain points, and opportunities across the entire journey. And my favorite is the critiques. So it used to be that we just used to throw screenshots in here and compare. It's a very quick way to compare. You can also vote right on them with stickies or with emojis. There's all sorts of different things you can do. You can make those anonymous if you want, so you can count votes anonymously and then show people who voted for what, or just how many voted for what. So it's a really great way to have your team vote for things without affecting other votes. And now, like I said, you can also do it with interactive. You can embed entire web pages in Miro. You can embed interactive prototypes in Miro. So those become really useful. And of course, you can still embed screenshots or just paste screenshots in. So I love doing design critiques in Miro because it feels interactive. You see everybody's cursors moving around. People can actually comment on your stuff. They can put stickies right on top of your work. They can draw things around it. They can really point things out, and that stuff doesn't disappear. So you put the work on there, and when you're done, it's all there for your record. So then you have to begin your launch sequence. You start creating the rough sketches that we talked about. So you go from ideas to your prototypes. You can leverage low fidelity prototypes from Miro or from other tools. And usually you will bring high fidelity designs from other tools back into Miro for your critiques. And all three of these can coexist on one board in the same space, maybe even in the same frame if you want to show the progression. So it creates a very easy way to show your work, even if it's not the place where you do all your work. So some best practices for Miro. So you want to use the frames as your star maps. They do help you navigate within your Miro. And I will also show you when I do the actual demo, there is a map inside Figma to help you navigate around a big file. You can color code your galaxy. So on my team, we have a pretty standard use of colors. So yellow for stickies just means your normal informational stuff. Orange means we have a question about something. Red means we've decided against something, or it's a feature we're scrapping. Blue means it's an action that needs to be taken. And then usually we have a color dedicated to some key team members. So somebody might get black, somebody might get teal, so they actually know that it's their action items. So we do have multiple colors for action items depending on who needs to do what. But then you can really quickly sort your board by color, and you see, okay, what are all the questions, what are all the things that we scrapped, what are all the things we need to discuss, what are all the action items, and who's going to do what. So I'm a big fan of doing it that way. You don't have to pick those colors, pick your own poison, but the point is, color code your files within your files. Zoom levels. Zoom levels, I will also show you an example of my favorite way of navigating within Miro. But zoom levels help you get really close to something if you need to look at detail, or also zoom out to kind of get a much bigger high-level picture. And one thing that most people probably won't tell you is you do have to tidy up your Miro files. They can get huge, they can get messy, they can get a little slow. So take your time, like if you had the meeting in a conference room, you do have to clean up a little bit afterwards. So you do want to get your ideas kind of organized and archive things that need to be archived, save things that need to be saved, and get them kind of grouped a little bit better. So it is important to regularly go back and tidy up your spaceship.
Who participates in all these meetings normally?
So who participates in all these meetings? It's a really good question. And it varies. It varies in a meeting. So it can be as small as me and my UI team. It could be me and a product owner. It could be multiple product owners. We will often have stakeholders join. We will often have clients join, though for client meetings we haven't actually gotten them into Miro yet. We're kind of sticking to either slide decks in PowerPoint. Oh my God, that was an antiquated, sorry Microsoft, antiquated product. Unless Microsoft wants to sponsor this video. Fantastic product. No, but also Figma slides have gotten really good, but we're still using PowerPoint for client presentations, or we take them into interactive Figma prototypes. So it's kind of one. Figma. We actually do interactive Figma prototypes, and now Claude Design prototypes. So we do a lot of interactive prototypes, whether it's Claude Design or fully polished in Figma, and then we just do a lot of good old-fashioned slideshows, which is becoming really old-fashioned. So trying to work away from that. But
Is there a point in keeping Figma, like we have Figma with a couple of design seats, we don't have a designer, we have some FigJam licenses, but with Claude Design, can I just import everything into Claude Design and get rid of my Figma subscription?
can you get rid of your Figma subscription? I think in 2026, the answer is no. We're not there yet. In 2027, the answer is maybe. I was able to get Claude Design to get very close with our current design system, very close. It still makes way too many mistakes. Most of the mistakes are acceptable, but it is not pixel perfect. So if you want pixel perfect, and in the design world you usually do want pixel perfect, you need still need Figma. Also, Figma is about to release, and I'm signing up for their beta program, their agents, Figma agents, where I saw the demos blew my mind with what's possible in Figma. It's basically going to be like Claude on steroids, Claude Design. So I haven't showed you Miro AI yet. The coolest thing about Miro AI is its ability to get context from your board. So instead of having to type up a bunch of information or upload things, you can literally highlight stuff on a part, or as much or as little of your board as you want, and it will use that as context for your prompt. So the prompt can be very short, and the context can be as big as you need it based on whatever you're selecting. Figma is doing something very similar, where it's aware of your design system, it's aware of all the other design parts, and so you can give it context by actually giving it your frames, your Figma files, other related Figma files, so maybe your prototype. So it can actually do so much more in my mind than Claude Design can today. Now, tomorrow might be a different story. All I know for sure is they're going to push each other really fast and really hard. We're at the beginning. This is like the tip of the iceberg. We might also have to become farmers in 2028. That's a legit possibility. So maybe learn how to farm as well. But until then, the tools are phenomenal. And yes, I am a Miro ambassador because Figma hasn't offered me an ambassadorship, but Figma is my favorite tool that I use every day. I do use Figma more than I use Miro, but I almost never use FigJam because we have Miro. We pay for both. We don't have to pay for both, but it's actually cheaper for non-designers to pay for Miro, because a Miro seat is $8, a full Figma seat is $15, and it includes FigJam and slides. So depending on what your teams are like, so for people who are doing design, Figma makes a perfect amount of sense. For some developers who are integrating it with Claude Code, it makes perfect sense to have design seat, because now they can connect to the MCP server and they can be in context. Again, it connects pieces much better than just Claude. Claude Design, in my mind today, is vaporware. It literally does nothing except try to leverage some stuff that you have and make it look interactive for a presentation. It's a great way to create a first draft prototype that looks better than old-fashioned wireframe.
So this question is probably going to make me sound like exactly what I am, which is I don't know much about that part of the design process, because I run hyper agile teams. So typically our prototyping is 0 to 0. We usually start with product, and so my question would be, how do you get the information in and out of the prototyping tool so that it's useful for the development side?
Great question, and I guess it depends on what information you're trying to get. So first of all, I would say hyper agile is great, but you're still blowing a ton of money on development that could be saved by actually doing at least one iteration of design.
I agree with you 100%.
Right? So prototyping is invaluable because of how fast you can get something to look like real software without having to do a single thing to make it real software, and then you can get real feedback and know, are you on the right track or not. You can also connect the different tools and eventually get to code with assistance of AI. So it can actually get you much better coded prototypes faster too. So all of that is valuable.
So I have my, let's call it, I have my high def prototype. I can export that in form of assets essentially for...
So again, it depends. It depends on what you need. So from Figma, we just started not long ago with Claude Code, where with an MCP server, it can connect to actual Figma frames, leveraging our design system, leveraging all the variants of, like, I'll give you a very simple example, a button. A button is going to have a default state, a hover state, a press state, a focused or tabbed state, and usually a disabled state, maybe an error state. So give or take 6 plus or minus states, maybe an animation state, right? So when it's like loading. So we were able to take every state of the button, of a whole bunch of different buttons, primary button, secondary button, tertiary button, link button, circle button, you name it button, call to action button, all of that. Like, we have a very robust design system and component. We took all of that, gave it to Claude Code. It was able to introspect every little piece, almost effortlessly produced Storybook. If you're not using Storybook, another fantastic product, and you should be using it. We just started using it recently. It really is phenomenal. So Claude Code can actually produce actual Storybook components that you can then use directly in code. And now our developers are spending way less time doing front-end coding and way more time doing back-end coding because the front-end Claude is able to assist them so much with that.
But so pre-Claude, before the AI could take those things and code them into essentially front-end assets, what was the workflow there?
So there could be multiple. It depends on the preference really on the developer. The perfect workflow could be either using the Figma developer seat for us, where they can introspect all the states. You can have annotations. You can like measure things precisely. We'll show you. And even within Figma, that's really not outside of today's talk. But within Figma, you can see CSS code and like all of that stuff that would help the developer.
You could almost get potentially style sheets.
Yes, you can basically, yeah.
Like TS files or
right.
even HTML files.
Right. The downside before was like it wouldn't tie them into like SCSS, so you wouldn't have variables. You would just have the kind of messy CSS or a little. Right. But now with Claude Code, that's no longer a limitation. It's able to take all of that and reference all your variables and colors and cross-reference all of that stuff that you would have to do manually, and it just does it. So the handoff process could be with Figma Dev, but it also could be like, I keep saying old-fashioned, but screenshots were sufficient for a long time. So there's a lot you can do with a very basic screenshot, and there's even more you can do with a very basic prototype where it's animated. So we've done, up until last year, all of our prototypes were Figma, and they had interactive states, like when you hover on a button, you see it. When you click on it, you see what happens. You saw we had transitions in our prototypes. So it really gave our users a feel for what it's going to be before it was being built, but not just users. When you're testing, you should also be testing and involving the developers. I didn't say that. I should almost go back to the earlier slide. Very important thing during this process is this is not just about your design team, this is not just about your product team, and this is not just about your users. It is also about the people who are going to be building it, which is your developers. They should be involved as much as possible during the entire process, especially the ideation process where they should be weighing in, during the prototyping process when they should be giving feedback on what isn't feasible, and during testing process they should also be one of the testers for the design to see, hey, not only is it going to work to solve a problem for somebody, but is it actually going to work for them to write code around it? Does it make sense? Would they need us to tweak something? Maybe something can be done in code, but it would take a year versus a month versus a day. And for better or worse, we have had to modify way too many designs based on the scope of work it would require for a developer. So sometimes you scale back a certain choice and you say, hey, this gets us 90% there, but it only takes 10% development time. Okay, we're doing it, right? So sometimes you have to adjust and bringing in your development team for your testing phases, for your ideation phases, for your prototyping phases is essential. They also have great ideas. So who says, especially today with AI, that a developer, especially an experienced developer, can jump in and create a prototype? The question becomes more, do you actually need a designer? And the answer to that, in my opinion, is absolutely still yes. Because we think of things that developers don't. They think of different problems, and they do different things for a living, especially I haven't been a developer for 14 years. So when I look at what Claude Design is producing right now, at first glance, it looks really impressive, like really impressive. But if you take even 5 minutes to take a much deeper dive at the result, the amount of what I would call UI mistakes that it's making is ridiculous. So it is today just good enough to be that first draft to help you ideate through your process, to present something, and then to give it to your designers and have them do it properly in Figma. So that's how I would go about it. Okay, so your mission starts now. Today is the day you get to, if you haven't tried Miro yet, you can. They actually have a secret feature at Miro when anybody can use it for free for a day. There's like miro.com/lite, and the next day it just disappears. So if you ever just need to like use Miro in a meeting or whatever without even a subscription, you can actually use it for a day and it's there, but then it kind of disappears. So there's pros and cons to that. If you can afford it, just buy it. But create your first board, invite your coworkers to it, invite your crew, and blast your project off. But this is not the end, this is just the beginning. Because after you blast off, you have to start steering the ship. And this is where I wanted to show you some tips and tricks of how I would actually use Miro. Except I have one more slide and I forgot what that one is. How to accelerate with templates. So I'll talk through both of these and then I'll actually show you. So I will show you some examples of templates and how I use them and which ones we can use. There's so many. I won't show you all of them. I just basically show you some that are available. You can use them for user vision and synthesis, for journey mapping, for persona building. I really like them for persona building. It kind of streamlines the process a lot. You can use them for prototyping and for wireframing. And you can definitely use them for design, critiques and feedback, and many, many, many other things. But I'm actually going to change my glasses so I can see a little bit better. So let's talk about how to actually use Miro if you haven't used it before. So my first and favorite tip for every new Miro user, and I'm sorry to tell it to Miro, is they do have two different modes of navigation. They have a mouse mode and a trackpad mode. I don't know why they have a mouse mode. I can't use it. I always do, the first thing I do is switch to the trackpad mode and still use it with a mouse, even though I use a trackball. In their trackpad mode, it is the same as Figma. In their mouse mode, I don't know what, I can't, honestly, it feels foreign to me, and I will show you how. Now there's a few key essential modifier keys that you need to memorize. First of all, even without trackpad mode, either with or without, you hold down the space bar and just move your mouse, and it will move the board around. It is not my favorite way of navigating, but you can navigate this way. If you hold the control key and you scroll your mouse wheel, it will zoom in and out. But not only will it zoom in and out, it will zoom in and out at what you're pointing at. So if you want to zoom in a particular spot, you point at that spot, you roll your wheel, you're there. And then my favorite modifier key is shift. So if you just roll your mouse wheel up and down, it will move your board up and down. If you hold shift and you roll up and down, it actually goes left and right. So I will show you this, and I will show you how to configure the trackpad input style. Now I'll also show you some templates. So let's get out of our PowerPoint presentation. So first example, if I hold control key, I roll my mouse wheel, you can now see I zoomed out. If I now hold shift key, it goes left. And then just scroll up, and this is the entire presentation that I have been working on. So on this presentation, the one on the bottom here is the one I actually gave you today. That was created with a lot of help from the Miro's AI. Oh, and I should stop the presentation at this point to get actual tools. And so when you're presenting, it doesn't give you all the tools. So Figma's AI starts with this thing called Psychics. There's a bunch of them. Now, Slides is one of their newer features. And it did mess up when I was doing it. So it did a really good job with the slides themselves until you needed to add one more slide, which is basically impossible with their AI. I can add more slides, but just me, and it gives me a blank slide. So it's a little bit annoying. And I can give them all the slides for context and tell it to create another slide, and then does something like this. I'm like, okay, why is it now a rectangle and not a 16 by 9? And why are the fonts different sizes? It's the same style, but it's a different slide. So I was having that problem a lot. The other good thing about Figma is it does store history. So I essentially lost my first slide deck that I created. And I was able to go back through history and recover it, and then use it to make a new slide deck and add more slides. So it was a little bit troublesome, and they can significantly improve the slides feature. They do have, by the way, instructor notes, which I did not use, mostly because I couldn't see them at the size of the monitor and looking down. But there is an instructor notes feature. It's similar to PowerPoint, but maybe not quite as good as PowerPoint for that. You can throw stuff on here, so I do have a script that I actually put in here. I had two different scripts. I was trying to figure out which one to use. I ended up using either one of them. They were done by... You just throw everything onto this board. And yeah, I did not want to show you I probably shouldn't show you our corporate boards, but our corporate boards are huge. They're probably 10 to 100 times bigger than this one. One important rule of thumb is you should start where things look good at 100%. So if I zoom in to 100%, that's like my normal reading level. When I zoom out, I can zoom out as much as I need to, but that's not really my reading level. It's kind of just to navigate around. Well, so you can, speaking of course your tools are here. Most if not tools have keyboard shortcuts. So if you want to add a sticky note, you can just click N, or you can just drag a sticky note on there and you can just start typing. Also, if you hit the tab key, just creates another sticky note and more. I think there's another keyboard shortcut, and if you hit, I think it's hit Alt and up. No, Shift and up.
5 minutes.
Control and up. All right. Anyways, there's more keyboard shortcuts. In fact, I will tell you the best way to learn all the keyboard shortcuts. I put some great videos over here on this in this frame called Prep, and my absolute favorite video of all is this one called 100 Miro Tips You Wish You Knew Sooner. If you're going to start using Miro, just watch this video. He covers just about every tip there is, and after using this for 20 years, I did not know all 100 of them. I actually learned a ton. Some of them are very basic, and some of them are not basic at all. Watch that video. It will help you a lot to get started. There's other videos in here too. This is a company I also teach for on weekends called Simply Learn. They have a free webinar where you can learn Miro as well. And there's some other just Miro in 3 minutes if you're really in the rush to get started, beginner tutorials, and how to work with AI. Also, they just had their conference. Oh my God, I forgot what their conference is called. But they did have their new announcements, and they launched a ton of new AI tools where they were showing integration with Cloud Design, etc. So it was awesome. But basically, you click on this button, and it brings you their AI assistant. And then you can use it like you would a normal AI, except, like I was saying, if you highlight certain things on the board, you can give it context, and it immediately will know that, hey, these are the things I selected, and I'm going to use those in context, but not the other things. So I'm a big fan of that. So that's pretty much, since I am almost out of time, I'll probably wrap up over there. I should go back to the second slide. I think I'll stop on this one that has my contact information as well as a slide deck. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You're welcome to look at the slide deck if you'd like. If you need a photographer, want a tennis or a pickleball partner, let me know. I am single, so feel free to reach out.
What about a Cold Fusion developer?
Oh, my friend asked, what about a Cold Fusion developer? I did spend, I guess, give or take 14 years writing Cold Fusion code. I used to be a Cold Fusion expert. I haven't written a line of code in 8 years, so I'm a little rusty. I can still probably be dangerous with Cold Fusion if I had to be.
Well, Cold Fusion is dangerous nowadays, so for sure.
Well, folks, thank you again for visiting. It was a pleasure to share some of my favorite. Oh, I didn't show you templates. Okay, we'll save templates for next time. Or you want a very quick glance at templates?
Yeah, we got 3 minutes.
All right. very quick glance at templates. So there are different ways of accessing templates. When you go to create a new file, they're there, but they're also available here under the templates tools. By the way, all the tools can be rearranged by dragging and dropping. And maybe one more very quick tip. If you hit the plus, there's a ton more stuff under there, and you can search, and this is where the connected apps exist. Anything you can imagine is probably available. You can connect it to Asana, to Jira. You can do, if you can imagine it, it's probably already available to you. So definitely check out the tools within the plus, as well as their marketplace. Yeah, diagramming, you name it. If you can imagine it, it's probably available. But templates, oops, wrong one, this one. They now have AI templates, and they have just about anything else you can imagine for stuff. You can want to start a project, roadmap tracking, prototyping, requirements for features, planning stuff, user feedback and highlights. This is one of the things that we use for UX design. Daily stand-up, very common to use this. We used to do flowcharts, of course. You can do flow diagrams. And you mentioned Agile, so there's a ton of, you can do your sprint planning in here. You can actually connect this to Jira or similar tools. It brings in information from Jira, makes it so easy to visualize stuff right here. You can do your daily stand-up, I think I already said that. Roadmap planning is very cool.
Does it have, in terms of design systems, like a lot of people used to use Bootstrap, right, and things like that. Now a lot of people use Tailwind. Does it have Tailwind and Tailwind derivative templates for quick prototyping?
That's a very good question, and I don't know. I think their prototyping are much more primitive than that, like more like wireframing prototypes for this. What they do have on branding is you can brand your Figma files, and I don't do it often enough, so now I can't remember off the top of my head, but under here somewhere is Brand Center. So if you actually want your files to look like...
Your attention, please.
Well, on that note, we should wrap this up. There is a brand center. You can drop your brand colors and whatnot in here, and you can use those colors for your stickies if you want. You can use your fonts, etc. So all of this can be customized to help you create boards that are more on brand. Although I honestly don't know what value there is except for maybe slide decks for boards to be on brand. As long as the team is effective in communicating, I think that's all you really need. And that is all for today, folks. So thank you.